Ah, awesome minds. How are you guys doing today? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. So we have to continue from where we stopped in the last class. I have to just cut that video because it was getting really long. Okay. So last time we discussed differences between micro and macroeconomics, then macroeconomic concerns and microeconomic concerns, and then we started with our principles of economics, talking about how people make decisions. I will consider this four, the first four. Okay. Now let's proceed with number five. So I should tell you something now that you're not supposed to memorize these principles, like cram them, like there are 10 principles of economics, just cram the whole 10, because students can be very funny. So you might be expecting your examination and someone tell you to explain the 10 principles of economics. So I don't get, I don't think I'm going to ever say something like that in my life for anybody, right? So what you need more is the understanding of these things so that by the time you start being asked questions, right, you will know what to do, right? For example, let me give you one of the test questions that one of the exam questions we give our student then was that a friend came to you and invited you to an investment opportunity. So the friend says that you should, I don't remember the value exactly, but the friend said that you should invest 50,000 naira in the opportunity. You don't have to do anything, right? And then after a week, right, you're going to get 100%. You're going to get 150,000 naira return. Like invest 50,000 naira today, then within like maybe 3 days to a week, you're going to get 150,000 naira, in return. So like your capital plus interest then is now going to be 200k after 1 week, and it says you don't have to do anything, right? So like, what economic principle are you supposed to like use, apply in that scenario? And then should you be skeptical about that or not? Should you be skeptical about that or not? So like first you look at it, okay, people invest like normally. And then you probably look at the state of your country, like we are getting close to being a depression, economic depression or a recession, and things are not really going well. Like what exactly is this guy going to put my money in that will give me that kind of reward in a week? Right? And then okay, I even thought maybe we ought to like produce something, right? Because you create value and then people pay for those things and then you get money. But like you just said, you don't have to do anything, just bring the money. So you normally should be skeptical. Like that's one of the questions we asked them. Normally you should be skeptical, and then what should you consider then? So you have to be looking at the fact that there is no free lunch. Like there's no free lunch. Like I don't have to do anything, just 50k and then I'll get 200k. Like just think about it. There's no free lunch. So what other principle do you have? There's no free lunch. I just start like think about it. Oh, people face trade-offs. Okay, okay. Think well, since that is what explains the fact that there's no free lunch, like people face trade-offs. Like ah, for me to get 200,000, it should be more than, and it is a week. It should be more than. It should be more than this. It should be more than this. So people face trade-offs. So you can see many of them didn't get the question correctly, like at least the first time. Second time, I think some people did. Right. So like that's just the kind of thing that we like expect. It's not as if okay, so states explain if your lecturer is doing that for you in your university, well, that's crucial. But like that's just the point. Like, how do you apply these economic principles in real life scenarios? So that's the most important thing, right? So we can debate that if you want it debated. We can debate the example I just gave. Okay. Then number five, trade makes everyone better off. So like between 5 to 8, we are now looking at how people interact. So the first one, if you remember, how people make decisions, the first four. So the second four now, we are looking at how people interact. So what is trade? Trade is simply the exchange of goods and services. Like that's the point, right? So when we say trade can make everyone better off, we are not saying, if you look at this very well, it didn't say that trade makes everyone better off because you might engage yourself in a harmful trade, right? So it says trade can make everyone better off. So like, what's it trying to say here? If we decide to exchange, instead of deciding to produce everything ourselves and be self-sufficient, we might have better outcomes, right? There might be more production, more satisfaction than if we decided to be self-reliant, right? So that's just what this principle is trying to say. Like, we would likely have better outcomes than if we decide to be self-reliant, if you decide to produce everything that you need on your own, right? So you want an economics class, you read everything, you read textbook that you can read, and then you also have to provide for your own food. So you have your farmland, then you also have to have a house, so you build your house on your own. So it's like then you also need, you need clothes, you do that. You need to transport yourself from one place to another. So you start developing cars, like damn it. You understand? So like, why don't we just engage in trade, right? Why don't I just do what is best for me to do, and then let others do what is best for them to do, and then we trade, right? So if I am better at what do you call it? If I am better at food production, right? I like farming, and then like that's what gives me the most reward, and like that's the thing that I can do, that I can get like a lot of money from. That's what I think based on my own ability. If I go into teaching, if I go into accountancy, I don't think I would survive. You understand? So like, let me just do farming. Let me produce food for people. And then when I start selling my product, the money that I earn now can be used to like buy things that other people are producing, like phones. You understand? Like cars, like whatever. So that's what this is trying to say. Trade can make everyone better off. And how does that happen? It's we now begin to look at two concepts: absolute advantage and comparative advantage. So one of this is a basis for trade, like it was an argument which should be the basis for trade. Adam Smith introduced absolute advantage theory, that trade should be based on absolute advantage. And what does absolute advantage mean? It simply means productivity. So trade should be based on productivity. So like if I am more productive, right? So at farming, for example, than my neighbor, than you are, for example, then I should engage in farming. Then you should engage in something that you are more productive, at. So yours might be what can we say now? Uh Maybe sewing, right? Maybe fashion designing, right? So if you're more productive at fashion design, let's say in about um 24 hours, you can come up with creative designs. Like you can come up with very fantastic products, and you like seven of them. But if I were to like be a fashion designer in that same 24 hours, I can only come up with like two great designs. So you're more productive than I am considering that time, right? So you should be the one engaged in fashion designing, then I should be the one engaged in farming. So that's what advantage is saying. And then we trade. So when we have our product, so you can sell some amount of your clothes to me, your designs to me, or your clothes to me now, clothes that you're able to design, and then in exchange for the food that I am producing. So I can do the same. So I could just do things like that, right? So and as it was saying, trade should be based on productivity. Like whoever is more productive at something should be the one to engage in that, discipline in that field, and then trade with someone else that they will likely have better outcomes than if parties decide to be like independent on their own. So if you decide to be self-reliant, if I want to produce if I want to produce everything on my own, and then you want to produce everything on your own, like so, it's not really going to work. And if I force myself to become a fashion designer, then I won't be as productive as as you would be. So it doesn't make sense. So like when we just stay within our lanes, something like that, where we are more productive, then we can just engage in trade. And if you look at it, I'm going to be having more clothes, I'm going to be having food, right? Because I specialize in food. I'm going to be having food, and I'm going to be having more clothes than I would have had if I decided to be self-reliant. You are going to have sufficient clothes for yourself, and then maybe your business or something like that, then you'll be able to have more food than you would have had if you had decided to go into farming, where you are not as productive as someone else would have been. But David Ricardo came years later to counter that the fact that I am more productive at something, or maybe a couple of things, doesn't mean that should be the basis for trade. Doesn't mean I should specialize in that thing. So what should be the basis is not absolute advantage, but comparative advantage. Comparative advantage. You must have come across that before. Comparative, Comparative advantage. And what is that really saying? So, Ricardo was not talking from the perspective of productivity. He started talking from the perspective of opportunity cost. Okay, if you decide to go into farming because you are good at farming, what are you giving up? Right? What are you giving up? Now, if you decide to go into fashion designing, you want to specialize in fashion designing, what are you giving up? So if what you are giving up to go into fashion designing is more than the benefits that you are getting from being a fashion designer, even though you are more productive at fashion designing, you shouldn't go into fashion designing. So that's what it was saying. That's what I was saying. Now let me kind of break it down. Let me make it a little simpler. So let's say at home you are the best at cooking, you are the best at cleaning, and then you are the best at washing cars, like washing your family cars. Exactly like that. Your siblings are trying. If maybe they're your older siblings, they do fantastic jobs. But then when it just comes to these three things, you are the best, right? Now the point is you have absolute advantage, right, compared to the rest of them because you are more productive. If you can put out the best work every time, then you are more productive, right, than they are. So like that means come watch me. When it is time for cleaning, you should be the one to be assigned to cleaning. When it's time for washing of cars or cooking, you should be the one assigned to that, like all the time. Right? That should be your specialization. But then you guys want to eat pounded jam and egusi this night. Tomorrow morning, you have an echo 404 paper, for example, maybe your final exam or something like that. Should you cook? That's the question. And we asked some of our students too. Should you be the one to cook? So you are the best at doing that. But in that scenario, should you be the one to cook? No. Simply because you have something more that you are giving up. So your siblings, they may only be giving up, maybe if they are the ones that are doing the cooking, they may be giving up their time at watching Nigerian Idol. For God's sake, exam tomorrow morning for an average rational person is more important than Nigerian Idol because you can write Nigerian, like you can watch if you're not watching the live one, you can watch another one later on, like just like a recap or an highlight or whatever. But like you have an exam, you probably haven't even studied well for this thing. Like this is what you should do. And if you fail this exam, like there's a carryover waiting for you. Right. So you shouldn't be the one to do. So that's just the point because that's not the most rewarding thing to do with your time at that point, even though you are the best at it. And some of us, to be very honest, we are the best at a couple of things, right? Not just one thing. There are things that we can really do better than those around us. So Ricardo now came and said, do things based on your opportunity cost. Whoever is giving up the least thing, so that's whoever has the lowest opportunity cost is the one that should engage in that field, is the one that should specialize in that thing, right? Now, in terms of countries, let's look at it this way. Nigeria produces crude oil. Nigeria is also very good at agriculture. A lot of and so let's say that the choice is between Nigeria and Ghana. This is another exam question. Between Nigeria and Ghana, then um Nigeria, of course, Nigeria can we have land and whatever, but which one is more rewarding for us to do? Should we engage in agriculture, or we should improve our energy sector more? We should engage in mining and refining of oil. So, which brings us more reward? Which is more rewarding, right? If we decide to like, I'm just like giving a very simplistic scenario because Nigeria things are complex. Nigeria can do both. That's just the point. But if we now realize that okay, the reward that we are going to get from what we are going to lose, in terms of specializing, being an agrarian country, right? In terms of oil that we've failed to develop and then like to make our base is higher than if we had specialized in oil, right? And then let's Ghana be the one to engage itself in agriculture. So if you realize that okay, there's something like that, so Nigeria should not go into farming. Nigeria might be better in agriculture than Ghana. Nigeria is giving up more, right? So Ghana may be a country that doesn't have a lot of resources, like natural resources. They may not have things as valuable as crude oil. So the best that they might be able to do based on what they are giving up, like the most rewarding thing that Ghana can do, or Ghana might be able to do. In this example now, the most rewarding thing for them is to engage in agriculture. So let them do that. So Nigeria specialize in the mining, refining, sale, and whatever of crude oil. So develop your oil industry because that is what is giving you the most reward. That is where you are giving up the least thing, right? And then leave Ghana. So Ghana should not really do much about their oil industry because they don't really even have what do you call it now? There's another country that you know. So Ghana should just go into farming. Nigeria should go into um, crude oil production and sales. So even though, and sometimes Nigeria might be the one that is better at both agriculture and crude oil whatever. But like Nigeria should not do both, right? Which is more rewarding because if you commit resources into agriculture, fewer resources are left to develop your oil industry, right? So like just focus more on your oil industry, then trade with Ghana that focuses more on its own agriculture. Because you will be giving up too much if you decide to go into agriculture, right? And Ghana will be doing too much. It will be losing out too much if it decides to go into mining. So like that's just it. And to be very honest, I think that makes sense. Because today that is now the acceptable basis of trade. A comparative advantage, it's the basis of trade. Why is it that the US is importing crude oil from Nigeria and then from other countries? Is it that they cannot produce it on their own? But like instead of devoting resources to this thing, it is not the most valuable thing to us. Okay, why not just go into shipbuilding, building of aircraft? That is more rewarding, right? So let me just go into that and then leave another country that considers oil more rewarding to it to engage in the oil. So that we just trade. So at the end of the day, I'll just buy from you, and so that's it. So I think there are two classes devoted to discussing international trade for now. Okay, and then so next in line is that market is usually a good way to organize economic activity. Right, and then what is a market? A market is basically any arrangement that brings buyers and sellers together for the purpose of exchange. Right, so if you're asked to define a market, which you must have learned in your high school, right, market is no longer, is not just a place. So when you're defining market, don't say market is a place where once you mention place, then the whole thing is just marked, down for you. So market is any arrangement that brings buyers and sellers together, right, for the purpose of exchange. So what this principle is trying to say is that if you want to talk about exchange, leave it to the market forces. If you want to talk about allocation of resources, leave it to the market forces, right? And then what are the market forces? They are basically these forces of demand and supply, right? The forces of demand and supply. So market in this principle is talking about capitalism. It's talking about a free market economy, right? An economy that is devoid of government intervention. So what it is saying here is that the first of demand and supply is enough to determine who gets what, right, and why they should get it. Okay, and if you look at the first of demand and supply, if the producer charges a price that is higher than the amount that people value a product, people are not going to buy the product, right? A lot of people are not going to buy the product. And then if a producer is producing something that is not that people don't really want, right? Then it's just a matter of time. The producer is going to be out of business. Like so, that's just the point. Yeah. Um, and then if the producer is producing something that is valuable to a lot of people, only those who can afford it will be able to get it. So in one way or the other, there is no wastage. So that is why free market is talking about efficiency. So we say it's an efficient market. Like there's no waste in a free market economy because as a producer, if you are producing what people don't really like, well, it's just a matter of time before it gets before a business shuts down and then it gets kicked out and replaced by a better business that produces what people really want. So if you're a producer that does not produce what people want, you are wasting the economic resources, right? Because those resources could have been put into alternative uses, into producing something that the people really want, right? And then the next is if you're charging a price that is so high, well, it's also a matter of time before if you refuse to innovate and have a technology that helps you to produce en masse and lowers your average cost so that you can charge the price that is reflective of the value of the product to people. But it's also a matter of time before you get kicked out by a better and a more innovative, business. So there's no wastage, like, and the government doesn't really have to come and do anything, right? So next is okay, a product is really nice, people want it, but you don't have the money to buy it as a consumer, then you don't get it, right? So because if you get it, right, resources are scarce, right? In an economy, there's scarcity everywhere, in every place. So if somebody who doesn't value a product, right, gets that product, you've denied someone else who values the product and I can afford to pay the price for that product. You deny that person the product, right? So that's like an unfair allocation of resources. So the way the free market economy works is that those who value a product and can afford the product are the ones who eventually get the product. Yeah. So if you look at it, let's look at education. If you have private schools around, yeah, and then standard ones don't charge low fees, whether high schools, universities, or whatever. Now, those who take their children there are those who can afford the service. They value the service, right? At least at an amount equal to the price that they are paying as school fees, or they value the service more than the school fee that they are paying, and that's why they can send their children there. So if you're somebody that you want that kind of education but you cannot afford it, then you're not going to have any place there. So that's just how it works. I'm not going to have any place there. All right, and then I wanted to say something. What if those private schools, the ones that charge maybe like 500,000 naira per term, what if they now reduce their prices to 40,000 naira? So if they reduce their price to 40,000 naira, some of those who could not afford the 500,000 naira own may not be able to afford the 40,000 naira own now, like because of a drastic fall in the price. But one thing that you probably realize is that there are some people that will go to that school that wouldn't really appreciate that kind of education, right? So what you just have to do is that you have to like raise that price back to kick such people out. So there are people that come to class, make noise, because they are not paying much, right? They are not paying much. They are not even paying they are not paying up to the value of the service that they are getting, right? So like before you know it, they are the one that disturb the class. They are the one that don't turn in assignments. They don't do this. They don't do that, and so it's not gonna work. So market is just talking about the demand and the supply side. So if you're an individual that cannot afford the product, you won't get the product. Someone else who can afford it will get it. And if the price of the product happens to be too high for consumers, well, a lot of people are going to like leave the product, and then you as a producer, you be the only consumer of your product. And before you know it, you cannot generate cash flows. You don't have revenue. How can you have profits? And at the end of the day, you just have to shut down or leave the market. You get replaced by a better company. So like the government doesn't really have to do anything. The voice of demand and supply, they are enough to allocate resources, right? So when we say the force of demand and supply, we call them market forces, and then we also call them the price mechanism, right? Because when demand and supply equate, when they intersect each other, they are now going to have an equilibrium, right? So something like this, you are going to have an equilibrium. This is supply, this is demand. You have an equilibrium price there, and then you have an equilibrium quantity here. So this equilibrium is called the market clearing price, where the demand is equal to the supply. So at the end of the day, what happens in the free market economy without government doing anything is that the demand is going to be equal to the supply. So leave the market alone to allocate resources. Let businesses produce whatever they think that people want, right? It is their demand that we tell them. So if people really demand for the product, then that means people value it. The business can continue to produce. But if people don't really want the product, then that means the business has to find something else to do. Government doesn't have to come and start forcing anything. Like just leave them alone. So that's what point six is saying, that markets are usually a good way. It is not saying markets are always a good way. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activities. So moving away from number six, when we get to number seven, this is saying that government can sometimes improve market outcomes. So it is saying that okay, point six, what do you call that? Principle 6 said markets, are usually a good way to organize economic activity, which means it has shortcomings, right? It's saying are usually, not are always, right? So in what cases should the government intervene? So we are looking at it that okay, a capitalist economy can be faulty in one way or the other, like a 100% capitalist economy. So like what are some of the faults that it has, and then what should be the role of the government? So that is what point seven is saying, that government sometimes they can come in and just improve the outcomes, right? So government comes into a market system to improve market outcomes when there is something that we call I don't know, it just hit my mind, when there's something that we call, where is it? Okay, so the government comes into the market to improve market outcomes when there's something that we call market failure. So market failure is basically a big name for a small concept, like it's just a small thing. So what market failure means is that the market has failed in allocating resources in a way that is beneficial to the society. So what it is saying basically is that supply is not equal to demand, right? There are people probably want more than is being supplied by the market, right? Or the supply is higher than what people are getting, something like that. So market has failed when demand is not equal to supply. So like if you come back to the free market economy, right, we have price mechanism working this way where there's going to be an equilibrium, but there can be an issue, where these things don't really happen. So and then that's what we call market failure. The market has failed to allocate resources the way it ought to allocate resources. So now what are some of the causes of market failure? Because this was the question that we gave them in their exam, right? And then not a lot of people answer the questions correctly. So causes of market failure You have number one, you have market power, you have income inequality, you have externalities. Right, so that we begin to explain this thing one after the other. So what does market power mean? So again, market failure occurs when resources are not distributed the way they ought to, like in a given economy. People want more and has been provided by the market, but the market is providing more than people really want. Okay, in the market. So first we have market power. So what is market power? Market power is the ability of a producer to raise prices at will. Like instead of the price of the product to be 50 naira, I can just take it up to like 100 naira, 200 naira at will. So when you do that, the market is not going to clear. Right. So when you have this is what we're saying, right? This is equilibrium, right? And this is equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. So market power is helping is when the producer can just increase the price like P2. This is P1. So by the time you come to this place, the quantity demanded has fallen, and then the quantity supplied has fallen rather. Quantity supplied has fallen, and you trace this to the no. This is the quantity demanded has fallen because you are tracing this first to the demand curve. That was open demand curve. And you bring it down. So it's QS because this is the demand curve, the supply curve. Then when you come here, this is quantity supplied. So you're now having a gap. The market is not clearing, right? So when a producer has the ability to like increase prices, as we will say, the producer has market, power. So when a business has market power, then it's like anti-competitive in nature. So there is going to be a market failure, right? Because some of those that were supposed to be able to like get that product initially would not be able to get it because they can no longer afford the higher prices. So number two, income inequality, right? So what I mean in that place is that look at the case of education that we said the other time. So because not some people cannot pay this price, but they value education, right? So but because they are poor, they can't afford it, and if they can't afford it, then they are not going to get it, right? So, and that's because they are poor or they're, socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged, right? So, where there is income inequality, market failure is likely going to occur because some people, it's not that they don't want to pay the price of the product, they value the product, they value it, they value it very, very well, but then they can't just afford it because they are poor. While there are others who have a lot of wealth, like who can buy the product and on like that. Then the next one is okay, that's even number three. Next one is externality. So what's an externality? So externality is simply the effect of a transaction between two parties on a third party that was not a part of that transaction initially. So let's say you and I, we are the one that are trying to like buy and sell something, but our action is now affecting someone else in a positive or a negative way. So that's what we call externality. So like that's the effect that our action is having on that person is what we call externality. Right. So we have negative externality where the third party is being influenced in a negative way from a transaction that is taking place between yourself and myself, and then we also have a positive externality where the third party is gaining, right? Okay, from the transaction between the two of us, right? So an example that we can an example is a jet, for example, or a plane. Okay, a plane that is you go to the airport, you board the plane and whatever. But then when the plane is flying, right, it causes noise pollution to some people. Those people are not part of those who sell or bought, the airplane services, but then they can be suffering from the impact, of that transaction when the plane is flying, over their houses or whatever, right? Especially if they go to hear the sound in a sudden way. So let's say there's somebody that is predisposed to shock or whatever that is having maybe HPP issues, high blood pressure issues, and then just hear the sounds maybe like suddenly or something like that. So the person can be affected in a negative way, right? Another one is, you can also have pollution, maybe like the one we spoke about the airplane was noise pollution. Then you could also have environmental pollution where you have a manufacturing business close to your resident, close to where you're living, and then the manufacturing business is like disposing of waste and all of that. Yeah, so that is also a negative externality. You are necessarily not part of the buyers of that manufacturer's product, right? But then you're suffering from that exchange, that production, that is happening, right? And then if we look at positive externality, that's like benefit to a third party. So let's say we want to like construct street lights. Okay, so you are the one bringing the business to me, right? And then I'm the business that is into like the provision of street lights and whatever. So you pay me some money and then we make the light. So there are people that didn't pay at all, but they are going to be benefiting from it because when the street light has been set in place, right? So you can no longer control the amount of people that are going to benefit from that, right? Especially if it's on the highway, right? So like as long as you are passing that highway, like everybody benefits from that street light. So like those are issues. So whenever there is a positive externality where a third party benefits like a lot from transaction between two parties, the market system would likely underproduce that service. Now, what do I mean? So let's say that I want to write a textbook, okay, and look at why some authors don't have soft copies of their textbooks. They prefer they are going to manufacture hard copies, and then they are going to produce it in a way that even if we want to photocopy the hard copy, it's likely stressful, or maybe it doesn't even worth it. Like we just buy it and then move. Right. So if I want to produce a textbook, um and I'm like, let me do a soft copy, right? And then put it on Amazon or whatever, and then people start to buy. Now the issue there is that as a class, somebody can buy the textbook, just one student can buy the textbook, and just share it on a WhatsApp group, like for the entire class. So one person bought the textbook, but there's a positive externality flowing to about 199 students. That's if you have 200 students on that WhatsApp group, so 199. So I'm like, damn it, like I don't want something like this, right? So I'm just not going to produce soft copies, even though there are people that really want soft copy textbooks. So like that's a case of positive externality. So like it leads to underproduction of goods, right? Underproduction of goods by the private sector. So that is one reason why the government like has to like step in. If people really need this thing, the government can step in to like enable its production. Maybe you subsidize private businesses that are producing it, or you just produce on your own, like make it available, right? So then in terms of negative externality, the service being provided, the product being provided by the market system, right, is going to be overproduced. Overproduced. Now, let me, if we go back to the example of like maybe the airplane and whatever. So some people don't like that sound, right? It disturbs them. And what about the company that is around your area that is just causing environmental pollution based on the activity? Some people don't like it. So it simply means that there should be a way for the government to curtail the activities of that company, right? Because like you are doing too much, it's affecting us. Like that's just the point. It's affecting us. Like the government can just come and find a way to like curtail the activity. Either you make them responsible for the pollution that they are causing, right, and then make them take care of that, right, or maybe they just have to like leave that environment or something. Except it is a designated industrial area, and then you were the one who look for trouble by going there to build a house where has been designated as an industrial area. All right. So even though a place is an industrial area, that still doesn't mean that you start polluting the whole environment as well. So like that's also it. So in the case of positive externality, you'll be having free riders. Now, who are the free riders? Those third parties that are benefiting from the service between two parties. So and when you look at it, that the free riders are many, right? Because as a private sector, you are looking at profit maximization. You want to be able to like if you produce this thing, so you want to be able to like get a lot of benefits from it, a lot of profit from it at the end of the day. But by the time you now see that people who are free riding on that service are a lot, so you just decide, I'm not producing it. And then the product disappears from the market or it's not there. Whereas people are demanding for it. So supply is low, but demand is more, right? Okay, you learn this thing more when you start dealing with public sector economics and whatever. All right, so how can the government intervene? I've mentioned one. The government can produce public goods. And what are public goods? Those are goods that have positive externalities, so they can produce them by themselves. For example, the schools that we were saying, so the government can start to produce like public schools, let people come. The street light, the government can just do it, like instead of allowing private sector to be deliberating, or should they provide it, will people pay for it, this and that. Government can just do it, or maybe finance the private sector and let them do it, right? So that's what we call, there could be production of public goods from the government side. There could be provision. So provision being that they are enabling the private sector to produce it by maybe subsidizing them or considering them in one way or the other. All right. Um, so you talk about health facilities as well. So that's why you have free healthcare, whatever. That's also something that the government, can do that will benefit people. Drainage systems, whatever. So the government can enable the provision of those things too. Now, income redistribution policies. So here, the government can just decide to tax the rich more. Since there are people who really want a particular service and cannot get it from the market economy, right? Maybe the education that we're talking about again, or maybe fuel in Nigeria, right? Look at fuel. They just removed subsidy because government was doing something before, it was subsidizing the product. Because if they were to leave it to the forces of demand and supply, the cost of a liter of fuel would be around maybe 1,200 naira, right, per liter. So the government was subsidizing it initially, same as education. But now the current government removed both education subsidy, removed what do you call it now, fuel subsidy, removed electricity subsidy, right? And then the price that we are having now are reflective of demand and supply forces, and the price are kind of unbearable to a lot of people, right? So that is what happens when you leave something to the private sector, right? So because this the demand and supply that will determine the thing at the end of the day, that determine the price. So like when the government just decided to like remove the subsidy, price of fuel went from less than 200 naira to like around 650, 700, right, naira, and then people cannot really afford those things again. Now university education too, schools that were paying less than 50,000 naira as school fees are now required to pay about 200,000 naira. I'm talking about federal schools, and that is for some courses. Other courses they are now required to pay up to like half a million a federal university, right? So that is what happens when you leave things to the like free market economy. So the government can now come and say, okay, let me um engage in what you call income redistribution. Okay, let me just tax the rich more, tax the poor less, and what we get from the rich, the revenue from the tax, whatever, we're now going to use to provide some things, right? Provide the schools that people like that can attend, provide health facilities, develop infrastructure and whatever. So another way they could also come in to intervene is in terms of subsidies, right? Subsidies. But I'm kind of dwelling more on this because we discover people don't really understand it, right? In terms of subsidy, so it just come, you subsidize the product. So once you subsidize the product, people that value the product but could not pay as much as that price would not be able to pay because subsidy reduces the cost of production of businesses and enables them to charge lower price for their product and supply more of that product to the market, right? So I'm going to like have a class, right, on impact of subsidy. So we demonstrate it using a graph, which you likely learn like in advanced years, right, in your undergraduate studies. So they can provide subsidies, subsidize those businesses that are key, strategic to the economic development of your country, that can really improve the standard of living of citizens. Talk about fuel, talk about education, talk about electricity, subsidize, those things. That's you push their price lower. Government is now responsible for paying the remaining part, right, of the price that the consumers are supposed to pay. So that's just it. Then they could also come in terms of regulation. So for a business that has market power, for example, they could just come and just tell you that, oh, this is not supposed to be. And sometimes two big businesses may just collude to act as one, to act as a monopoly. So the government can come and start to regulate that kind of activity, and that's an example of what they can do is antitrust policy. So government coming to regulate the activity of businesses that are trying to collude, right? So as to act as monopoly. And when you act as monopoly, you can charge higher prices for your product, right? So government can look at that. This is not fair. So like they can begin to like introduce antitrust policies that break, the kind of agreement that will make two businesses or three businesses to come and act as if they were a monopoly, right? So those are government interventions to improve market outcomes. Next is price legislation. So if there is a business that has market power, you are just increasing price anyhow because your product is a necessity. For example, oil in Nigeria, fuel in Nigeria, today 200, 300, 500, 700, then 1,000 naira per liter. Government can just look at it that you guys are now doing too much, right? So let us impose a maximum price legislation, right? So where they put a cap on the product, on the price that you can sell the product and all of. So like these are some strategies that the government can implement in like coming into improving the outcomes of the market, system. So if you look at it, if you think about it properly, it's like we advocating for a mixed economy. So if you leave something to the market forces, you are talking about allowing the economy to be 100% capitalist. But when the government begins to intervene, so we are now looking at a mixed economy, right? So like a balance and what have you. So I'm not now saying that government intervention always improve market outcomes because government intervention can even make things worse, right? It can be like why the government even intervene at all in the first place, and that is why the policy says that's why the principle says government can sometimes, like it is not all the time, they may come in and just bastardize the whole thing, and then they may come in and the whole thing works, right? So that's it. Then number eight, an economy's standard of living depends on its ability to produce. So one that's happening recently, NLC, the Nigerian Labour Congress, the institution, like in terms of labor, like labor rights, whatever, like that. Okay, they came and then said the government, due to the inflationary pressures in the economy, that the government should pay them should start paying workers a minimum wage of 615,000 naira. And to be honest, that is so funny. Right? That is so fun. Let me explain how minimum wage works. Right? So minimum wage is simply saying that for anybody that you employ, the minimum you must pay that person is whatever the country's minimum wage is. So right now in Nigeria it is 30,000 naira. So from 30,000 naira due to the inflationary pressures, and to be honest, inflation has been terrible in Nigeria lately. So they are now arguing that due to that inflationary pressure, it should be increased to 615,000, and that's a joke. Because if you were to be paying your gate man 30,000 naira before, now you have to be paying the gate man 615,000, right? And then that is not where it ends, because it is a structure. Like if I was earning 100,000 naira before, right, as a teacher or something, then my gatesman or the gatesman of the school was earning 30,000 naira. Now that the minimum wage is like 615, for example, so if the gatesman is taking 615, I'll take something more, right, to still show that okay, a teacher is still valuable to an economy than the position of a teacher is like valuable like than that. So I can't still be collecting 100K. So my own might be like around maybe like 1.2 million. So just look at it. So if you're trying to combat inflation, then you are going to make it worse, because there's not going to be a lot of money, and they will soon look like Zimbabwe or Venezuela. So it's not really realistic. When some of us add of that kind of proposition from the NLC, it was just like, oh wow, wow, interesting, right? Because it is not realistic. It's not possible. No, it is possible, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, if you understand economics. So now, but can the government approve a minimum wage of 615,000? Actually, they can. And let me give you an example. A friend of mine earns it. He used to earn 40,000 naira per month. Okay, he just told a testimony recently at for a boss that he works for, right? And then he does other things too. So one day he just decided to like intentionally ask his boss for help concerning one of the other jobs that he used to do for other people, one of the other tasks he used to do for like other clients. And then when his boss saw it, he was like, "So you can do this kind of a thing?" Say, "Yeah, why not? I can do it." And that was his intention. He wanted the boss to like, "No, that you're underpaying me, that I am much more than the task that I'm probably doing for you." And then the boss now said, "Okay, fine. I think besides doing this thing for someone else, you can also do it for us, right? And then we would like to pay you 75,000 naira." Like where did 75,000 naira just come from 40,000 naira? So like you could pay me 75,000 naira before, and you were paying me 40,000 naira, right? And then he was like, "I have to be very honest. If I'm to do this thing for you, I won't take anything less than 200,000 naira. I'm serious. Like this is what is just happening, right? I won't take anything less than 200,000 naira." And then the boss now looked at him and said, "I appreciate that you value yourself. Done. 200K. So the salary now is 200K. That's going to be collected from next month." So look at it. Why was the boss able to approve 200,000 naira? Because he has seen a quality, right, in that guy, my friend. He has seen a quality in that this guy can do more than what he's currently doing. This guy can be more productive, and because he's more productive, right, I will pay him more. So that's just the way it works. So here, it is not you coming to say you want a minimum wage of 615,000. Have you done something, right, that warrants me to pay that kind of wage? So when we say we cannot afford something, sometimes we can't afford to pay that kind of money. Sometimes it's because the value that you're bringing into our organization is not what you're trying to like ask us, what you're asking us for. So we won't pay you, right? So we tell you can't afford it, we can't afford your service. Sometimes, like it's not at all times. So you get it. But once you say you can demonstrate the value, right, that is very, very beneficial to our company, we'll be the one begging you. So like look at the testimony. So it's the same way it happens to individuals, it's how it happens, like to the economy, at large. So this is saying that the standard of living of a country. And what does standard of living mean? According to like Mankey and Taylor, so they were saying that it is the amount of goods and services that the real income of people can buy, right, in an economy. The amount of goods and services that the real income of people can buy in an economy, right? Real income, that is your income adjusted for inflation. So it's usually when you want to compare standard of living of countries, you look at the GDP per capita. Don't worry, if you don't understand that. Like when you start doing macroeconomics, you will get it. It's not difficult, right? So if you are productive, you will earn high income. And if you're earning high income, your living standards will improve. Simple. So it is not that you come and ask me for high income and then say that when I pay you that, you will increase your productivity. It doesn't work that way. So the first thing is you demonstrate that you are a very productive worker, and on my own, I will pay you, something that is commensurate to your productivity. And to be honest, the way businesses operate, there's something called the marginal value product, which is looking at the value of the service that a worker is bringing into an organization, right? Multiplied by the price of whatever the product. It's just the way it's calculated. Marginal product, like your additional contribution to the organization in terms of maybe service or goods, right? When they employed you, what more did you add to the company? Multiplied by the price, right, of those products. So that's your marginal value product, right? So is it marginal value product, marginal product value, something like that? So now what businesses do is that they will pay you a wage rate that is lower than that because they also need to make a profit off you, right? So if a business is paying you 1 million naira, they are comfortably paying you 1 million naira. Your value, your addition to that company is more than 1 million naira. It can be about 5 million naira, and that's why they can afford to pay you 1 million naira. But if the value of your service is 500,000 naira, they won't pay you 1 million naira. They will tell you they cannot afford it, right? So it is. So if you are looking at it in terms of the entire economy, the productivity of the people in a country determines their standard of living. Why would you get to the UK and then UK citizens are earning more than Nigerian citizens? Go and look at the kind of services that are being rendered in the UK and look at the kind of services that are being rendered in Nigeria, right? So just go and look at those things. Okay, and then there you have your answer. So the last two, so we are done with how people interact. I just want to finish up this thing in this particular video. Um, Prices rise when government prints too much money. So we asked them this question as well. Okay, you have a friend that doesn't really understand why the Nigerian government isn't printing a lot of money to settle its loans. It's like why you whole maybe domestic debt or like foreign debt, and then why you not just printing money to just go and pay off those debts? So the answer to that is that when the government prints too much money, inflation is going to occur in the economy. How does that work? When you print too much money, you have to find a way of getting the money into the economy, right? So after you've gotten the money into the economy, people are going to have more money to spend than they used to. So the cause of inflation basically is scarcity. The fact that demand is more than supply, like that is usually the cause of inflation. So if it's a supply, if it's a cost push inflation now, so that's the kind of inflation that occurs when supply reduces, because cost of production has increased. So demand is the same, but supply is coming back, is reducing, right? So of course you are going to be having scarcity like that. So the remaining product in the economy command a high price. That's one. Now, if you are experiencing a demand pull inflation, people are demanding more goods and services than businesses can supply. So what will businesses do in that situation? At least for that period, they are going to raise prices of their product, right? Because a lot of people are looking for our products. So if I was charging 20,000 naira, if I can just raise like 45,000 naira, because there are so many people looking for it, and then there are people that are going to be buying. But what I am doing by increasing the price from 20 to 45 is simply what? An increase in prices. So if people start doing it throughout the economy, it's going to cause an increase in price level. Then inflation is going to occur. So the fundamental thing about inflation is that demand is more than supply. Like that's just the point, right? So when the government prints too much money, then if you remember, one of the qualities of money from high school is um relative scarcity. So when the government is printing too much money, money becomes less scarce. It's just everywhere. And once money is everywhere, it loses value, right? It loses value. So that is why the government is not, encouraged, right, to like print money. They do print money, but like they shouldn't print too much money. So you don't just owe debt and then print money to settle it. You have to pay salaries, print money to settle this and that. Before you know it, inflation is going to like start happening in your economy, and then people begin to lose the purchasing power of their money. Money becomes valueless. I can have a whole bag of money, and the only thing you can buy is two markers. Okay. So then the last one, there is a short-run relationship between inflation and unemployment in an economy. So what this one, what's why it says short-run? Not every economist agree to this, at least empirically because of data, right? But what he's saying is that you are going to pick one, right? If you want unemployment to reduce in your economy, then you have to allow room for inflation, right? And then if you want to reduce unemployment in your economy, like you have to like give room for unemployment. So there is a curve that demonstrates that relationship. It is called the Phillips curve. Phillips curve. So here, what you have here is inflation rates. What you have here is unemployment rate. So the graph is something like this. So there's the Phillips curve, origin zero. So saying tell you that there's a short run. So like there's a trade-off. I think how does it say it? There's a short run relationship between it's a short run relationship. So what it basically states is that there is a short-run trade-off. Yeah, it's not a relationship. Short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So how does that work? For example, I was saying it in the first class that there's an acceptable level of inflation in an economy, which is 1 to 2%. 1 to 2%. So it's not. We don't want our inflation rate to be zero. If our inflation rate is zero, right, 0%, you can think it's desirable, it's nice, but it's going to have an implication on unemployment, right? Because if your inflation rate is zero, then more jobs won't be created, right? There's no like there more jobs won't be created, but then your population is growing, and which means people need to have more jobs. Okay, now let me explain how it works very well. So if the kind of inflation that is beneficial for the economy is a demand pull inflation, an inflation that occurs because people now have more money to spend, right? So when people have more money to spend, right? We are looking at inflation between 1% to 2%, not more than that, right? When people have more money to spend, they begin to demand for more goods and services from businesses. So what businesses will do at that time, right? Because it's not some many businesses will not be able to increase production as fast as people's demand for them. So what they would do is that they will jack up the price of their products. So when they jack it up, so the issue now is that if that demand is sustained, like okay, a couple of months, okay, you're looking at the okay, people are demanding. So that would make businesses to begin to make plans, right? At increasing their productive capacity. Okay, so if I had one school before and then I used to have like 1,000 students, like maybe 800 students, no, 1,000 students, let me just say 1,000 students. Then, like a particular session, I have about 1,200 applicants, right? And they all passed the cutoff mark like to get admission into the school. Okay, now I can't. We don't have room for 1,200 students. So like, okay, we just jack up our prices, right? Somewhat, right? And then the second session, like we have something like that. Third session, oh wow! So it looks as if this thing is sustained. So what we begin to plan on having a new school. You understand? Building another one, increasing our capacity, or finding a way to extend the old one. So once you do that, it has implications on jobs because you'll be needing people to work there. You'll be needing capital resources and whatever. Do you get it? So that process will lead to more employment opportunities. So your population that is growing, right? People will begin to have jobs that can cater, for their own needs. So like that is why you need that, or that is one of the reasons why a low positive inflation like 1 to 2% is acceptable for the economic health of a given economy. So if you leave it at 0%, of course the value of money is very stable, all of that, but it has implications on jobs. Right. So if you look at what I just painted, scenario I just painted, there is inflation in the economy because people are demanding more and then it is sustained, but it's not very high inflation rate. That makes businesses like what do you call it, expand. Do you understand? Then they begin to like employ more people, unemployment rate drops. So inflation is increasing, unemployment is reducing. Right. So if you start to like implement policies that will lower inflation rates, then you should be ready to bear the cost of higher unemployment. So that's just it. So people that were able to like demand for your product on a sustained level more than you can provide, and the government now says, okay, we don't like this inflation that's being caused, so like begin to increase the tax rates, corporate profits tax, corporate income tax rates, personal income tax rates. So you begin to limit their purchasing power, right? So if you do too much of that, demand will fall, right? Because people who had money to spend before, like demand of their products is going to fall now because okay, of course, or maybe you start increasing interest rates and all of that. So if you increase interest rates, it makes people to like save more. They will now want to save because they can get future returns on their money. You know, they can get higher future returns on their money. Now, the same interest rate that you've increased is going to be an increased cost of production to businesses that want to take loans to expand. Do you get it? So like to businesses, cost of production is now more expensive. So individuals, consumers, they are not buying as much as they are supposed to buy. So you are going to be having what do you call it now? Demand falling, even supply too would fall. Like, do you get it? And once supply is falling because okay, we don't have customers as we used to on an economy wide level because people are not spending. Well, some of our workers would have to go home because, like, for real, you don't need your services. Okay, and when things are better, like, you have to, like, okay, you can come back, we're going to call you, we're going to reach out to you. So like that is, the kind of thing that so you can think about these things. There are nothing that you're going to understand, even from watching these videos. These are nothing that you're going to understand like straight up like that, like straight up like that. Some you understand them better as you progress, right, in your journey as an economic student. So with that, we've come to the end of this video. I'm not sure there is something else that I would like to say. Okay, I think I'm done. So this is Philip's call. So as an assignment, I think in your own words, just write what you understand about these 10 principles, right? In your own words. Give me examples. Give me examples, not something too much, right? So from what we've done, don't give me examples I've given you. I just give me your own examples, right? And then just enjoy yourself. Thank you very much. We'll meet in class next time. Have fun.